Hey everyone, it's Tommy V from 81 Real Estate, physical therapy, doctor of physical therapy that does real estate investing. We're having another episode with an amazing special guest. His name is Greg. He is the Ski PT on Instagram. He took this amazing idea of how to niche down and help a particular audience, which is what all of you should already be doing. And that's kind of what we're trying to do here with real estate is kind of go through a lot of different models, a lot of different strategies, a lot of different ideas and find one that is the best fit for you and your goals. And so Greg's going to kind of run through kind of his real estate journey, what they're doing now, and kind of what the future plans are. And we'll ask him some of the classic questions we asked some other guests. So take it away, Greg.
Awesome. Hey, everyone. My name is Greg. As Tommy said, I'm the ski physical therapist on Instagram. So if you're listening, go ahead and follow me if you're a skier. But anyways, I want to talk about my real estate journey. And I kind of just so happened to fall into it because my nagging mother kept telling me to get into it. So God bless her soul, but I'm very blessed to be where I am today. But essentially, when I graduated physical therapy school, I ended up moving into a house with four other guys that I went to undergrad with. And we were renting from this house. And once pandemic hit, instead of going out and doing all these things, we were living together and just spending a lot of time together. And my mom was like, "Hey, Greg, you know how you're living with all your friends? Why don't you take this large sum of money that's just been sitting in your bank doing nothing and go find a house and then ask all of your friends to move in with you?" At first, I was like, "No, that's stupid, Mom. Like, I have everything here. I hate moving." But then she started to send me all these like Redfin deals about things that were happening. And I was like, okay, like, just because I'm not at work right now and I have a lot of time, I'll go and look at like these various houses. So we started to go around the city, and I'm in Seattle. Started to look at the city. And at the time, this is in 2020, houses were going like fire. People were paying like 100,000 over asking. And it was like, there's no way I'm getting a house. But I was like, if it's going to be a way for me to live with my friends, but then also make some money, yeah, we'll look into it. So long story short, I put offers on 5 different houses, got beat out every single time. And then we got to this one house, and I just prayed, and God just blessed me with the house to really just serve the people living in it. So all of my friends ended up moving in. It was a 4-bedroom house. But I was like, you know, I am going to be willing to live in the living room, which has 2 closed doors, so it can become another room. But I'm going to convert this living room to another room so that way I can live for free and have like all of my friends pay me essentially. Long story from there, or short story from there, I ended up discovering Bigger Pockets and learning that this strategy is actually called the house hack. So if you're new to real estate or you want to like figure out what that is, just go on Google, type in Bigger Pockets and house hack, and you'll find a ton of different blog posts, forums, and even podcasts that'll like go into explaining what that is. But I'm going to try and share kind of like what that looks like for you guys today, because I stumbled upon it and it's changed like my wife and I's life for like where we live and how we like spend our money, which has been really cool.
Man,
So
I love
originally, oh,
that,
go ahead,
dude.
Tommy.
Because I love that because all the people that we've talked to so far said, oh, I started getting interested and I read up and I studied for a year or two and I joined all these classes and courses and I did this, that, and the other. And then they waited a year, 2, 3 years before pulling the trigger on that first property. So I love your story that you had very limited education. You didn't even know the terms, but you still did it. Like that is so cool. I love that.
Yeah, and I mean, when you're like first getting started, you don't need to overcomplicate the numbers. Really, it's just like, is the rent that you're taking in going to be more than the mortgage? And then are you leaving some leeway in case like shit hits the fan, which you should, because it's going to, if it's vacancy or things that need to get repaired. But as long as the numbers make sense, it's like you need to be able to disconnect, I would say, the emotion from where you're living, and just know that like I think the average person lives in a place for 7 years or something. It's like this is not going to be your permanent home. It's a place where you're going to temporarily reside, and things can easily change. But what I will say is like I got very, very, very lucky in the fact that where like I was able to get the house, the numbers worked out. Like I didn't do any math before. But if I was to go back knowing what I knew now, like I could have maximized way, way more potential in terms of the place I like got. yeah, knowing like what I know now. So I will say like out of everything, you can really like hit a home run from the initial deal, or you can dig yourself a huge trench from the initial deal. And like I would say, if you're having trouble pulling the trigger, always go back to the numbers. And if the numbers make sense, it's going to be a win. Unless, like, obviously something happens drastically where there's like a tornado or a hurricane that takes out a bunch of homes. But for the most part, like, if you do the numbers correctly and like the math behind the mental process of purchasing the home, or I guess any investment per se, like you need to know the numbers really well. But if the numbers make sense, it's going to work out.
Exactly. And so really clarifying, like, are you trying to get more of a short-term gain, more of a medium-term gain, or more of a long-term gain? Because then that kind of narrows down the way you run the numbers. And then once you have your numbers defined, it's easy to say yes or no to properties. So that's a great tip there. So that's the house hack house. And you said in Seattle, right?
Correct. Yeah.
That's so cool. And are you still living there doing the house hack, or did you move out and make it a rental?
Yeah, so before my wife and I got married, I was living with all of my buddies, and it was kind of awkward to like have them like move out after we got married, but it actually worked out well because all of them had girlfriends at the time. So it was like either we'll move in with girlfriends or we'll like move into their own space. And it was just a point at life where we were all moving forward and needed our own space. So whether it was my encouraging to do that or they were like, yeah, I'm getting kicked out because Greg's getting married, it ended up being now I had 4 vacant rooms. So fortunately, the house we have, it's a split level where it's like a daylight basement and an upper level. And what we ended up doing is investing all the money that I had made from the time that I purchased the house, and house hacked it until I was married. And I just reinvested all that money into converting the downstairs into like a 1 bedroom apartment attached dwelling unit. So I had to add a kitchen there. I had to change the laundry situation. But essentially, just converting that downstairs so someone had a separate entrance, could go in and just have their own space. So now what my wife and I do is we live in the upstairs unit and we rent out the downstairs unit to a tenant. And what we've done, or the strategy that we've used, is renting it to, I guess you would call it medium term tenants. So we were thinking Airbnb, but I was like, I don't want to go down and change sheets every other day. So we started to look for travel nurses that are coming to Seattle, and Seattle being such a transient city, there's so many groups that travel nurses are looking for space. And especially during the summer, like Seattle is the best place to live in the summer. It's sunny, honestly, from July 4th all the way to the end of September, which people don't think. But don't tell people that. Please stay out of Seattle in the summer unless you're going to come rent from me. But it's been really fruitful just to rent that out to travel nurse, because they come in half the time, they extend anyways because they love Seattle so much. And then really I'm just looking for a renter every 6 months, which has been super easy. And I vet all of my tenants before they come in. So I'll do background checks on them, make sure they actually have a contract, call their previous landlords and make sure, like they paid on time. But assuming all of that checks out, like once they've come in, it's been a very seamless process. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, I don't want to live with other people. But I think the same way in which you would find the house and like do the math and make sure everything works, it's like the people that you're living with, you want to make sure like they're good people as well, and they're going to like work with you. And because you're living in the house, like you have the right to like say no to these people. If even if some of the laws say like, hey, you have to like accept someone from like this type of like demographic, it's like, well, because you're renting by the room, at least this is how it works in Seattle. You have the right to say like, no, I don't want someone that's a heroin addict renting my room.
Yeah, you're exactly right. That because you're living there on premises and it's an attached dwelling unit, it's not a separate unit, it's not a separate whole house. It's at the end of the day, it's your house. You have a lot more control to approve or deny people for whatever terms that you want to define there. For platform, are you doing that, running that through Furnished Finder, or are you kind of using something like Tenant Cloud to do that?
Yeah, so to find some of our leads, I'll use Furnish Finder. But to be honest, like a lot of the leads that come in on Furnish Finder are interns coming to Seattle and they're in college. And nothing against college interns, but like I know where I was in college and I was definitely more of the party type. And I just prefer to rent to travel nurses because I know like their schedules are pretty intense. They're going to go to work, come home, just want to chill most of the time. And, you know, maybe they'll have friends over to like drink, but they're not going to be throwing parties on a Tuesday night where I need to wake up on Wednesday at 7 to go to work. So that's why we've tried to selectively market to travel nurses. But in a lot of these major cities, travel nurses actually have groups that have been created on Facebook. So for Seattle in particular, we use a page called Seattle Travel Nurses. And travel nurses will basically post like, hey, I'm coming from June 1st to September 1st, looking for these specifications. And then I just use the search function and see if that person matches. And even if it's not a perfect match, I'll like message the person and say like, hey, this is available. And usually they're in a different city, but like one, a lot of people get scammed on there. So the way that I like verify myself, like I'll do a video interview with them so they know who I am. I'll actually take my phone on FaceTime and like do a video tour of the space. And then a lot of my old tenants that have rented from me, I try and get reviews from them just like on their experience. So that way it's like a verified process through and through.
Oh, that's so smart. And you're cutting out the middleman, so you're keeping all the fees there. That's smart. I like it. I'm definitely, so we have a property in Jacksonville, Florida that we acquired last April, and a tenant's been in there 1 year now. It's a 3-bedroom, 1 bath, like 1,000 square feet, fenced in backyard. And it's in Jacksonville, Florida. A bunch of hospitals there, especially the Mayo Clinic is right nearby. And I'm toying with the idea of making it a medium-term rental. Obviously it's empty, so I'd have to furnish it, and get it going. But kind of what I've done following some other people, I've posted it up and kind of done a little bit of information, made a whole post on Furnish Finder to see if I'm getting any leads or traction. So I don't know. We'll see if I take the plunge there or not. We'll see.
Yeah. Honestly, Tommy, one tip I have is honestly, some nurses, if they're going to come for a 6-month contract, they kind of want to get their own furniture and they'll either like buy it and resell it when they're there because they want things that are theirs. So you may not even need to furnish it as long as you ask in the group, like, what is your preference, right? But say you do need to furnish it. What I've done is just gone on like Buy Nothing. It's like that Facebook group that's local, and people are always trying to get rid of their old couches and stuff. And it's like, as long as you can, if you're not in the area, if you can pay someone to come like pick it up, set it up in the place and just pay them like whatever money it is, then it's like you're not even paying for the furniture, you're just paying for the service of someone coming to do that. Or if you're in the area, you just go and pick all that, like get a U-Haul for the day, go and pick all that stuff up, set it up, and then you're done.
Yeah, and like a lot of people have said, okay, Airbnb, you have to make that luxury because it's people traveling and people going on a trip. But for like your travel nurses, travel healthcare professionals, they're coming to work and they're coming to go to bed. So people say things like blackout curtains, make sure it's a comfy bed. Like you have to make it nice and safe, but you don't have to make it like luxury.
Absolutely. And oh, one thing that I did too, I actually just asked on that travel nurses group, like, hey, if you were coming to a space, like what amenities would you want? And then I just took everything that they recommended. And when I was remodeling the space, I was just like, okay, this is exactly what I'm going to do.
Perfect. Yeah. And we have the benefit too. So we did travel contracts for a year and a half. And then my sister's a travel nurse. And so she's gone to a bunch of places and given me feedback as well. Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this wasn't there. Or, oh, they did this and it was really nice. But the biggest thing that I've heard consistently is blackout curtains. Because if they're on
Yeah,
that night shift, they want those blackout curtains to sleep during the day.
absolutely.
That's cool, man. That's cool. So so do you have any other properties or just the one?
Just the one. We last year we put aside sum of money and we were going to put it into either like another rental property in Seattle, or we were thinking about doing long distance real estate investing just because we were exploring like cash flow versus like building equity in a house with appreciation. But like what actually ended up happening is we met our business coach, so Greg Todd, and he kind of brought us on. And Sarah and I don't have any background in real estate. Our background is in physical therapy. So we were like, you know what, like, let's invest in ourselves. Like, we already have this skill that we put so much time of going to school in. Let's reinvest in ourselves and go through a coaching program to basically take that money and grow the business side of things, but always having in the back of our mind, like, you know, as the business makes money, we can put that into real estate and diversify in many different funnels. Because it's like, if you put everything into the business or everything into stocks or everything into real estate, if that thing collapses, it's like you're kind of screwed. So right now we have obviously like our 401k from our previous job, and now we're building our business, which is going to be an asset. And then from there, we can start building out that real estate portfolio as well.
So smart. I like it. I like it. Being diversified. It's huge, especially in this market. This market is changing so fast in business, stocks, real estate. I mean, there's just so many moving parts. It's good to kind of be spread out a little bit. So you mentioned this before we hopped on the call that you were in the military and you were kind of investigating using a VA loan. Actually, a couple of weeks ago, we had on a nurse who served in the military. She was actually deployed in Afghanistan during COVID. So if you want to check out that episode, go check it out. How she got deployed during COVID and then came back to the lockdown. And so she had a huge culture shock. More than most of us. But using the VA loan is a powerful tool because you don't put any money down. So did you use that for this house?
Yeah, unfortunately, I only served 5.5 years in the Coast Guard Reserve, and you need to do 6 years in the reserves to qualify for the VA loan. I got into PT school during that time, and I tried to do PT school and the military reserves at the same time, and just having class on the weekends in an accelerated program was just too much. So I put in a request to get out early. Unbeknownst to me, I didn't know that this would disqualify me for the VA loan, and I didn't know anything about real estate at the time. So had I known that, I probably would have just bit the bullet, maybe like suffered my grades a little bit in school, but just like, you know, get by with C's. And I could have leveraged the VA loan. But I would say, like, all that aside, like, I've seen people use the VA loan, like people from the Coast Guard that I was in. He used the VA loan to buy a house. He lived in it, flipped the house by using sweat equity, meaning that he went in, like, redid all like the finishing, so the flooring. He had background in electrical, but even if you don't do that, like doing flooring, repainting, doing trim, that's not like genius type work. Like, you can do that when you're like off your job. But essentially went in, flipped the house, made it look really nice. Um, Sold that house, or took all the money that he basically appreciated in the house by putting like his work into it, sold that house, and was able to get now like the house that he really wanted. And it was because he was able to like use the VA loan to leverage that to get to like where he wants. And like from here, he can keep doing that, but he's just satisfied with like where he's at in life and like with his kids. So I think that's the thing. You can always like keep leveling up, but always having like in the back of the mind, like, what is the point of leveling up? Like, what are you trying to get to? And then once you get to your dream life, are you satisfied there? Or like, what is the limit? Because the world's not going to say there's a limit. It's that you can keep going and keep going and keep going. But
Yeah, that's an important point too, of knowing what your goals are. Kind of what is your dream life? What is your dream day? What are your financial goals, your family goals, your faith goals, your personal goals, and making sure those are all aligned so that it makes it easier to see the path to get there. That's a really important point. And it doesn't mean everybody's real estate investing journey doesn't mean, oh, I have to get 100 doors and get $20,000 a month. And that's what my goal is. Like, if you're just getting one house will change your life. If you get 4 rental properties, you're in like the top 3% of all Americans, because so many people are just living paycheck to paycheck. They have credit card loans. They have way too expensive cars. They can't afford to live in houses they can't afford. So just by having 1 to 4 assets, I mean, you're already top tier right there.
absolutely.
So as we talked about kind of your journey, we talked about what you're doing, the value add, all those things. If you had to go back, what would be the top 3 real estate books that you would recommend for someone, you know, exploring, getting started, or kind of the 3 that helped you the most? And they can even be business. They don't have to be specifically real estate.
In terms of books, I'm not a huge reader, but I'll do Audible. And I really
Same.
like
That's all I
mindset.
listen to.
Yeah. I really personally like mindset books because it helps you kind of like get into the mindset of like how to serve people better, right? So one of the first books I ever read was like How to Win Friends and Influence Others, classic by Dale Carnegie. And it's just a really good book on just like really genuinely appreciating people and like what they do and like how to give them praise for that. And as a physical therapist or maybe a healthcare worker, you may be working in a situation that sucks. And it's like, I was there. But like, if your employer recognizes that, like, yes, it sucks. And like, they recognize the hard work that you put in, like, even if you're getting paid crap, it's like you're willing to go to battle because your coworkers like have your back. So I think that would be like the first one. It's like, before you even invest in real estate, how do you like treat other people and how do you like show like genuine appreciation towards them is really, really important. I think the second one that is an excellent place to start is going to be everyone's like classic by what's his name? You know what I'm talking about.
A Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad.
Right. I
Like,
think it's Robert Kiyosaki.
yeah, Robert Kiyosaki. Honestly, like everyone says that, like, yeah, this is my favorite book, but it's kind of true. It kind of just changes your perspective on like what money comes from, especially being in the healthcare field where you're like, oh, I'm going to be a physical therapist. I'm going to get my doctorate. And then this is me or my story. Like, I'm going to get my doctorate. I'm going to go into residency. I'm going to do fellowship and basically get to the highest level of education that I can. And then you look and it's like, oh, I did all this work, but I'm not getting any pay raise for all this work. And it's just like something's like not adding up in our society. It's like we're taught like the more work you put in and the more achievements you have, you would think it's like paid like equally based on your accolades, but it's like it's not true. And in the book, I won't ruin it for you, but basically his poor dad is his PhD dad that's teaching at the university and has all the accolades. And his rich dad, who is like his friend's dad, is basically this investor that like took the time to understand like how finances work and like reinvested that money to help him like get the life that he ideally wanted. So yeah, Rich Dad Poor Dad for sure is a great one to start with. And then the last one I really liked is like even before you have a rental property or before you get anyone in, I really like Brandon Turner's like how to I think it's like how to manage your real estate property. And he gives so many like step-by-step instructions. It's like, okay, before you get a tenant, these are the things that you want to look at for the tenant. And it's like, okay, I'm going to keep a list of those things so that way I know before I get a tenant in, I want to screen these things. It's like before all these problems happen, like have a list of people that you can call so that way you're not scrambling at the last minute and paying like way more than you have because you've already like established all of these like relationships with people. But that's just a super practical book that I think like when you are going to get into it, it's just like even if you don't have a rental property already, just knowing like, hey, these are all the things that I should be thinking about in addition to just like the money itself of like what goes into the deal is really good to consider.
Yeah, I feel like so many put so much emphasis on getting the house, finding the house, analyzing the deal, running the numbers. And then once you actually get the house, it's like, okay, now what? Now you got the house. What are you going to do now?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's good to put emphasis on like getting the house because the deal can like make or break you, right? But like once you've picked the perfect deal, or it doesn't have to be a perfect deal, I'll take that back. Once you've picked a deal that makes sense numbers wise, well, you need to know like everything else that goes like on with it. Otherwise, you can be really stupid and dig yourself a hole really quickly. Because like it can make sense on numbers, but I don't know, like you have a roof that goes bad that you didn't account for, and that's $20,000 where you're like, oh no, I don't have that money. Well, like you like that's your own fault for not planning ahead.
Yeah, definitely. So that's kind of one of the goals of the group that we're trying to make, the community we're trying to make is people a little bit further down the path, people kind of starting the path, that we can all learn from each other and make sure that the newer people avoid some of those big mistakes that people know about or even big mistakes we've personally made. So I love that, man. We just got to help. We just got to help the next people make less mistakes, and get there faster. That's kind of what we're trying to do.
Absolutely. Have you heard of this guy, Ramit Sethi, at all? I Will Teach You to Be Rich.
I have not.
Okay.
Got to go
So
find them.
Ramit, he has a podcast. It's called I Will Teach You to Be Rich as well. And I'm not sponsored by him, but he brings up a really interesting point of like investing in real estate and investing in stocks are a little bit different. So his big thing is if you invest in index funds, the average index fund returns 7%. So it's like if you're going to invest in real estate, you have to make sure that the deal you're putting into is actually going to make a better return, because if it's not, then you're better off just putting your money into the stock market and doing nothing. When you do real estate, you have to consider like, okay, you have the headaches of dealing with the tenant and finding that, which takes time. Are you considering that as part of like your deal? Are you considering like yard work if you're house hacking and like you're doing the yard work, or are you renting that out? And there's all these other variables that we would say are free because we're doing the work, but at the end of the day, your time is money. So it's like if you're doing the work, like yes, you can make the deal, your real estate deal work, but like realistically, how much work do you want to be doing on your real estate deal? And when you're analyzing it, I would say like have a very like conservative number where it's like, hey, if I don't want to do anything, like this is how much it's going to cost. Or it's like, hey, if I do all the work, this is how much it's going to cost. And then you have like that range of what you're looking for.
Yeah, that's so smart. While we were traveling, all of our rentals became out of state rentals. So I had kind of had my hands tied and had to run the business like a business. And yes, it is different numbers.
Absolutely.
Well, cool, man. I appreciate you taking time out of your busy Seattle day to spend some time with us, drop some knowledge, share your story. Again, just tell me where people can find you. We'll sign off here.
Yeah, so if you want to just ask me about my house hack or just anything real estate or about skiing, you can hit me up on Instagram. My Instagram is at @the_ski_PT. Or if you type just the ski PT on there, I think I have enough followers by now that it should pop up. Fingers crossed.
Good deal. Good deal. Well, I appreciate your time, man, and love to have you in the community. I'd love to have you back as a guest in the future. See what other stuff you're up to.
Definitely. Thanks for having me, Tommy.
All right. See ya.
See ya.